Hi, my name's Paul Grogan and welcome to another Gaming Rules Quick and Dirty review. In this video I'm going to be telling you what I think about Mombasa, designed by Alexander Pfister and published in 2015 by R&R Games. Now, bit of a spoiler, this was my game of the year for 2015. So this is going to be a positive review, but I'm going to try and tell you why I like it. Now, this game was voted on by my Patreon supporters as one of the games that they wanted me to review in April 2019. So thank you very much to all of my Patreon supporters for making this video possible and for voting on it, because it meant I got to play it again. And as I mentioned, I really like the game. So if you want to support me on Patreon and basically take part in future voting, then you can do at www.patreon.com/gaming rules. Anyway, let's get on with the review. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the setting of the game, because this is one of the things which the game's not come under criticism for, but I know a number of people have felt that the subject matter of the game is a little bit sensitive. So the game is set, the rulebook actually does a very good job of introducing it. It says this is not a historical simulation. It kind of takes place the period sort of between the 15th century and the mid 20th century. And it does deal with, some dark times in human history. It's basically the exploitation of the African continent. Jason Levine summed it up very well and said this game is like Blood Diamond, the film, the board game. And there's 4 companies and they are basically exploring the continent of Africa and they are exploiting the resources in it. It happened. That's just the way things were. But the game doesn't recreate the darkest parts of it. For example, historically, there was a lot of exploitation and use of slavery. That's not covered in the game whatsoever. So it is just an economic simulation of 4 different companies vying for control of it. And as I say, the rulebook does a very good job at the start of saying that and actually gives you a reference of a book if you want to read it for more information about it. Now, that's the setting of the game. Let's talk briefly about how it works. The game is played over 7 rounds. You are trying to get as much money as you can. Money is kind of victory points in the game. And there are some main ways that you will get points, and that is the companies. So there are 4 different companies, which is this. The black one is Mombasa, the red one is Cape Town, the white one is St. Louis, and Cairo is the orange one. And it's kind of like a stocks and shares game. You will be investing in these companies, which means you'll be moving these markers up on this track, on these tracks here. There's one around the outside of the board for each of the companies. And the higher it is, that means you have more shares in that particular company. So you will want that company to do well. And you need to be watching what the other players do, because they'll be investing in companies as well. And the way that it works is that the companies will expand onto the board by moving these little houses from here onto the board. And you'll notice that underneath some of these houses, there is a gold coin. And basically at the end of the game, the number of visible gold coins that you can see is the value of each share in that particular company. It's a very clever, simple way of doing it. But the interaction between the companies comes that if say, Cape Town has expanded and is here, for example, and then Mombasa comes along, if Mombasa was to expand into here, what happens is black will get another house on the board, but the red one will go back. We'll put it there. And by returning houses to this area of the board, what you are doing is you are increasing the value of one company, but you are decreasing the value of another company. So whilst you don't sell your shares in companies, that doesn't change. You only ever get additional shares. The value of the different companies will change over the course of the game. And that's one of the primary ways of getting points. The basic mechanism in the game is all about cards. And I'm going to touch on this now, this is one of my favourite parts of the game. It is absolutely fantastic. It's not really a deck building game. It's kind of a hand management and hand building game, because you can acquire more cards during the game. And then every round you will play cards below your player board. So you will play 1 in each slot, and you start the game with 3 slots and it can go up to 5. And the more cards you play, the more actions you'll be able to do. But then at the end of that round, you have cards above your player board from previous rounds. You will take back one of those stacks into your hand. You don't have to take back the biggest one, but sometimes you want to, because that's more cards. Let's say in this situation, I want to take this one back. So those cards will go back to my hand, and then all the cards I played in that round would go up into the appropriate columns. So there you go. So next round, when I take cards back, I'm probably going to take back this column. That's essentially it, but it is very, very clever, and you need to be planning a few turns ahead, because you will be playing cards above your below your player board, which will move above your player board. But then at the end of the round, you only get to take back one of the piles of cards. So later on in the game, you'll be playing a card and you might never get that card back. In fact, you might never get that card back if you play it at the start of the game. So the card play mechanism is absolutely fantastic. Now, the other two ways of getting points, or mainly getting points, is the left and right hand side of your player board. You have a diamond track where you will be moving this diamond up as the game goes on, and the further it is ahead, the more points you'll get. And there's a book track as well. And you will be placing books on here, and you will be moving this marker up as the game goes on. And again, the further it is ahead, the better. That's a very quick overview of how the game plays. As I say, the card play mechanism is fantastic. If you've played Blackout Hong Kong, which came from the same designer last year, it uses a similar card play mechanism, but slightly different. So the card play mechanism is very interesting, choosing which cards to play, where to place them, which doesn't indicate the order of your actions. You can do your actions in any order, but it's when those cards go above your player board that really matters. The different strategies in the game. So the last game we played was a very good example of the fact that different strategies can win. Me, I only did a little bit of the left-hand side of my player board. I got 10 points from diamonds, which wasn't very much. I only did a little bit of the right-hand side of my player board, which is the book track, because I'm terrible at it. And I managed to get 10 points from there. But I got like 100 and something points from investing in the different companies. Whereas Tom, who came a close second to me, didn't really do much of that, but really did the diamond track and really did the book track and got, most of his points from that. So there are various strategies in the game. Now, replayability, it's always the same four companies, but replayability is actually quite high. And that is because these tracks at the edge of the board, they determine what the special abilities of those companies are. And as you move your marker up this track, you will unlock special abilities. Well, they don't always go in the same position, and they're double-sided. Each one is double-sided with a different thing on both sides. So for your first game, you should use A1, B1, C1 and D1, and it tells you where to put them. But in later games, there's a set of cards which you can use, and basically each one will get a random one. And that really does increase the variability. The card mix is always the same. The cards come seeded in order A, B, C, D and E, and they get slightly more powerful as it goes on. So they're always the same, but it's the tracks that make the game different. Right, now let's touch on components, artwork and graphic design. Components, no problem with it. It's pretty much generic wooden components. It's normal wooden houses and everything else like that. The cards are fine. The thickness of all the cardboard is absolutely fine. No problem with that. There was some kind of weird printing error on the 1 coins in that some of them came out the size of the 5 coins. And in fact, in my copy, 2 of the punch boards were completely misprinted by about half a centimetre. R&R Games replaced them without question. So that's all good. Components-wise, fine. Graphic design is extremely clear. I class this as a medium to heavy Euro-style game. There is a lot of little icons in various places, and especially the icons on the books are actually quite small. But the icons all make sense. Once you understand what these abilities do, the iconography is very good. The rulebook is one of the best rulebooks that I have read. This and Great Western Trail, I believe, were both done by the same person, which is Victor Kobilki. Apologies if I've pronounced your name incorrectly, but it's very good. I was able to learn this game from the rulebook with absolutely 0 questions, which is quite rare these days. And as I say, the Great Western Trail was the same. Lots of examples, really well laid out. Rulebook was fantastic. So if you're worried about learning the game from the rulebook, you should be absolutely fine. What else is there to talk about? So the great things about the game, the ebb and flow of the companies is just fantastic. Player interaction is more than in most Euro games that I play. And it's direct player interaction done indirectly. Now, what I mean by that is you are not attacking another player directly. But let's say you have lots and lots of, shares in the Mombasa company and you don't have any shares in Cape Town, but, another player does. So the yellow player is going to score lots of points for Cape Town. And if you expand Mombasa and you expand into Red's area like this, there you go. Right, what you've done is you have increased the size of You've increased the value of the shares in Mombasa whilst directly decreasing the value of the shares of Cape Town. That is in effect taking points off the yellow player and giving points to you. So you're not attacking the other player, but what you're doing is you are affecting the share value of the companies that they are invested in. And this is where the player interaction comes in quite a lot, because you've really got to watch what companies the player is invested in. Let's say all 3 players are invested in Cape Town and you're not. That means it is in the interest of 3 players to be expanding Cape Town, and let's say you're the only person who invested in Mombasa. I can guarantee you that the way the game's going to work is by the end of the game your Mombasa shares are not going to be worth very much, because 3 of the players are going to be wanting to expand Cape Town. So you've really got to be careful. You've got to watch the board, watch what the other players are investing in, and basically take actions accordingly. Now, I'm going to sort of list this as a downside of the game, but it's not really. But it used to be. I think on my 2nd or 3rd game. So I'm saying this just so you've got something to be aware about if you do play the game. I think it was my 2nd or 3rd game, or maybe even my 2nd and my 3rd game. I thought I was doing quite well. And then in the last turn of the game, a player played all of their exploration cards and basically expanded one of the companies, doing the example that I've just given, and absolutely decimated where I was and cost me like a bazillion points. And I lost the game because of it. And I was like, and I sort of thought, this game isn't as good as I thought it was. That was a massive swingy moment on the last turn of the game where it was out of my control and I lost loads of points. Now, that sounds terrible, but you've got to be aware of that. If there is another player going after you in the last round of the game, and that player has lots of these hat cards, which allow you to do lots of exploration, and they are heavily invested in a company which is next to yours, they're going to do that. And you need to be aware of that. And you can plan for it and you can react to it. Well, you can't react to it because you'll probably be going before they do. But there are things that you can do in the game. So you just need to be aware that there may be a late game swing with a large movement of all of these, because you're going to be collecting more of these hat cards during the game, and you could have an absolutely massive expansion on the last turn of the game and absolutely cripple another player. If that happens, maybe invest in the same company that they're investing in. Watch the board, watch what the other players are doing, and react accordingly. Other things about the game, I play the game with a house rule. Basically, there are these spaces here, and on your turn, if you have the most of a particular thing, you can place one of your action pawns onto that space, and you get to do the ability. And the house rule I play with is the maximum banana space. When you go there, you've got to say max bananas. There you go. So yeah, not really a house rule. But these spaces here are critical, and turn order is really important, because when you go into this space, it says max bananas, but it's if you've got the most or joint most. So if at the start of the turn, after you've played your cards face down, they get revealed and you've got 4 bananas and somebody else has got 4 bananas, but you're going before them in turn order, boom, use the space, get the bonus of it. It's a free thing. It's not going to cost you anything. So it's really good. But you do only get 2 of these markers during the game. And, there's a worker placement aspect to it, but it's only this bit of the board. It's the card playing mechanism, which is the main part, but there is these little markers that you can place on these spaces here. And depending on which of the companies that are in use, there's a way you can get more of the markers. But yeah, that's these spaces. Yeah, there's a lot going on. Now, your first game of this is probably going to be about 2.5, maybe 3 hours with rules explanation. It is a very streamlined game once you know what you're doing, and you can probably play a game in about 2 hours, I think. I don't know what it says on the box. What does it say on the box? 75 to 150 minutes. Yeah, that's reasonable. Now, I've not played this game 2-player. I really wanted to before I did this review. I wasn't able to, so apologies for that. But I have spoken to a number of other people that have played it 2-player, and the general consensus is it works, but you're not going to get the full game experience. 4 players with the 4 different companies, that's probably where the sweet spot for this game is. I know a lot of 4-player games tend to work best at 3, but the general consensus seems to be that the game works best at 4. I'm hoping to play it 2-player at some point, and I might put some comments in the show notes with my opinion of that, or talk about it on one of my monthly video logs. But for now, I haven't played the game 2-player. I've spoken to people that did, and they said, yeah, it's okay, but it isn't the sweet spot for the game. Other things, I like the diamond track. I like the way that moves. I love the mechanisms of the way the book track works, but I just can't get my head around it. It's really hard to do properly. You've got to put the books on the right positions, plan it, turns in a head, get the same books with the similar icons so you can move this inkwell as far as you can. It's really clever. That kind of thing, it could be a game in itself, but it's kind of an extra mechanism put in this game. And I know some people have sort of criticised the game for that and said, oh, the game works absolutely fine, but then you've got these two little mini games going on. If you like medium weight games rather than medium to heavy, then yeah, the rest of the game is fine, and I guess it could do without that. But for me, this game is the sweet spot of the kind of heaviness of games that I like. And as I said at the start, Game of the Year 2015 for me. So thank you very much to Alexander Pfister for designing it. Thank you to all the people involved in the rulebook and the graphic design. This is a game that I will rarely say no to. In fact, I will only say no to this if there is a game, which I prefer playing to this. But yeah, this is a very, very good game. I hope you've enjoyed this review. If you've got any comments or feedback, please put them in the show notes below. And as mentioned at the start, if you want to support me and help keep the show going and help the show improve, and you want to be in with a vote on which games you think I should review, then please consider supporting me over at patreon.com/gaming rules. Until next time, take care, and thanks for watching. Gaming Rules is proudly sponsored by Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience. Visit GameToppersLLC.com.